Depression is a mood disorder that causes a persistent feeling of sadness and loss of interest. Also called major depressive disorder or clinical depression, it affects how one feels, thinks, and behaves and can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems. Hello and welcome to Medical Dialogues, your daily dose of health and medical news. I'm Mr. Zaman and today I'm going to discuss about whether or not there's a link between depression before stroke occurs. While depression is a common problem for people who have had a stroke, some people may have symptoms of depression years before their stroke. According to a study published in the July 13, 2022 online issue of Neurology, the medical journal of the American Academy of Neurology, researchers found that in people who developed a stroke, symptoms of depression preceded the onset of stroke and further worsened after the stroke. For the study, researchers looked at 10,797 adults with an average age of 65 and without a history of stroke at the start of the study. Participants were followed for up to 12 years. During that time, 425 people had a stroke. They were matched with 4,249 people who did not have a stroke but were similar in their age, gender, racial or ethnic identity and other health conditions. Participants took a survey every 2 years asking whether they experienced symptoms of depression in the past week, including feeling depressed, feeling lonely, feeling sad, everything was an effort and restless sleep. The more symptoms participants had, the higher their score. Researchers found that 6 years before the time of the stroke, people who later had a stroke and those who did not had scores roughly the same, about 1.6 points, but at about 2 years before the stroke, scores of people who have had a stroke started increasing on average by 0.33 points. Following stroke, depressive symptoms increased an additional 0.23 points for this group, reaching a total of about 2.1 points, and they stayed that high for 10 years after the stroke. In contrast, the scores of people who did not have a stroke remained roughly the same throughout the study. When evaluating whether people could be considered clinically depressed, scoring 3 points or higher on the scale, researchers found a slightly different pattern of results emerged. At the assessment before the stroke, 29% of people who were about to have a stroke met the criteria for having probable depression compared to 24% of those who did not have a stroke. But at the time of the stroke, 34% of the people who had a stroke met the criteria for having probable depression compared to 24% of those who did not have a stroke. Those numbers were about the same 6 years after the stroke. This suggests that increasing symptoms of depression before stroke are mostly subtle changes and may not always be clinically detectable. But even slight increases in depressive symptoms, especially mood and fatigue related symptoms, may be a signal of stroke that is about to occur. Depression is not only a post-stroke issue but also a pre-stroke phenomenon. Whether these pre-stroke changes can be used to predict who will have a stroke is unclear, the researchers concluded. That's all for today. Stay tuned to Medical Dialogues for latest updates.
Never miss a medical update from Medical Dialogues. Like, subscribe, and press the bell icon.